Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to take a look at the question of whether or not the Werewolf by Night special presentation works better on October 31st or in late December. Now you may say to yourself, of course, October 31st, it's a Halloween special, right? But there are several timelines that place it not only in late December, but actually after the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. Now, while the Marvel Cinematic Universe official timeline book won't be out for another month, Amazon.com did release the index to the book online, and if you look at it really closely, you can pretty much figure out the entire timeline. So we now know that the Werewolf by Night special is placed between Thor Love and Thunder in October and before the Guardians holiday special around Christmas, thus making the October 31st date seem the most likely. So, why then is there some suggestions for a late December date? Well, let's dive right in and see what we can find out. So it is worth mentioning, throughout the month of September, I am running a contest on the channel. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a comment. The winner will be chosen at random and announced in early October and can choose from one of the 3 books above. Best of luck. It is worth saying up front, some pretty cool news in case you hadn't heard it, but Werewolf by Night is going to be re-released in color on Disney+. Bloody Disgusting had an article entitled Hulu's Halloween and Disney Plus's Hallow Stream Celebrate Halloween with Werewolf by Night in color and much more. Now you can read the article down there. It really is just talking about the special presentation itself, but the important date is October 20th when it's going to be in color. So let me know what you think about that. I mean, I admit I really liked the moody atmosphere of it being in black and white, but I'm kind of curious to see what it'll look like in color. Of course, the blood will be much more apparent. So I do wonder if it's actually going to increase the rating, because I think they got away with some of the blood because it was black and white. So we'll see. Very interesting. But yeah, let me know what you think about that. Either way, I'm excited to see it, and it's a fun special, so it'll be fun to watch it again. Okay, so I mentioned the index. Now, in a previous video, I went through this entire thing in detail, so you can check that out if you want. But we're going to focus on Werewolf by Night's placement. So first, notice Gore, which is from Love and Thunder, obviously, is on pages 318 to 323. Then we move to Bloodstone, Ulysses Bloodstone on page 324, and then to Drax on page 325, which would be the holiday special. So that obviously shows that Werewolf by Night is placed in the timeline after Love and Thunder, which is, early to mid-October, and then before the holiday special with the Guardians on December 20th, Christmas Eve and December 25th, Christmas. Okay, so what does this mean, and why did Disney Plus place it where they did? Well, first of all, we do know it's at least after the latest date of death in the mausoleum, when they're trapped in the mausoleum at one point. And I think the latest date is Griffith Burke there. It looks like 1988, I think. But it's not real clear because the numbers are hard to read. But we can clearly see this one, Beverly, passed away in 1986. So, okay, the special does tell us it's after, the late 80s. It also tells us it's after 2012 because they mention the Avengers. So that's really it. Beyond that, we have no clue what year it's set, which is kind of cool unless you're trying to put something on a timeline, and then it's frustrating. But anyway, we really had to rely on Disney Plus's timeline for this, and it's pretty clear that the Disney Plus timeline placed it in 2025. Okay, so we have 2025 as a year, and then of course now the index makes it real clear, right? We saw that. It's in 2025 for sure. But Disney Plus kind of indicated 2025 as well. Okay, so where do we place it then specifically? Well, we do learn in this Latin message here, which I don't know Latin, so I couldn't translate it myself, but I'm told by many people that it says, Ulysses Bloodstone was slain on the last full moon of the year and at the end of the bloodshed. Which sounds really cool. I want to know what that bloodshed is. Maybe it's the end of his bloodshed or something else. But yeah, tell us more. That would be really cool. Anyway, so we learned something very important is he died on the last full moon of the year. Okay, so we could try 2 different years. Let's try the last full moon of 2025 and the last full moon of 2024, because in both cases that would land the special in 2025, okay? So we're going to go with the last full moon of 2025. They actually have that scheduled out because we know the phases of the moon and when it's going to change, and we know that is December 4th of 2025. That's the last full moon of 2025. In the special itself, it is placed 5 days before the next full moon, which of course is really important because Jack can turn into werewolf, on the full moon. So the next full moon is January 3rd of 2026, and 5 days prior to that is December 29th of 2025. So now you see where some of the timelines got that December 29th date. Then they look at the fact that that puts about 25 days from the point of his death to the point of all these ceremonies going on. So is that enough time to do everything we saw in the episode? Well, I will say in general, it's enough time to bury someone. I mean, 25 days is pretty standard, sometimes sooner than that. Occasionally, if they're being cremated, I guess it could be later than that. But yeah, 25 days seems realistic for a normal ceremony. But we're going to see it seems like they need a little more time than that for all the things they have to do, which we'll get to in a second. So let's look at the other possible date. What if Ulysses died on the last full moon of 2024? Okay, well, we can look that up because they have those schedules. The last full moon of 2024 is December 15th of 2024. Okay, then like I said, we know that the next full moon is in 5 days. Well, the only full moon that would fit us somewhere after Love and Thunder in October and before the Guardians holiday special in December is the November 5th, 2025 full moon. So take back 5 days from there and we get October 31st. I mean, that really seems intentional on Marvel's part. You got to love it, right? I mean, they're really clear. He dies on the last full moon of the previous year, and then 5 days prior to a full moon is when this is happening, and it just perfectly lands on October 31st. One issue, though. That's over 10 months between the time that he died and the time they had the ceremony. So we kind of have two very big windows to go with, 25 days or 10 months. Somewhere in the middle probably makes more sense, but nonetheless, we have to choose between those two. So let's look at this. Now, one important thing to point out is Jack wears Dia de los Muertos face markings throughout the special. So there's two ways to look at this. You can take it on the surface level, which is he's doing it because it's Dia de los Muertos time frame, which would be, by the way, late October. So that would be perfect. That works perfectly with an October setting. But some of the proponents for the other date in December have said maybe he's doing this to honor his ancestors, in which case maybe he wears it all the time, or he wore it to this specific event. So while this leans toward the October 31st date, it's not necessarily definitive per se. But nonetheless, remember, the index has said it's in October, so really therefore, I think he's doing it because of Dia de los Muertos. But let's look again at how long it would take to do this ceremony. We have 25 days, and we have 10 months. Well, first of all, they would have to taxidermy the corpse if it was 10 months, right? I mean, probably would have to even 25 days, but really would have to do it if it's 10 months. But as we can see during the special they're really good at taxidermy. There's nastiness all over the walls of all these creatures that have been killed by Ulysses' bloodstone. So, okay, taxidermy is not an issue. Now, here's the biggest reason I think they need more than 25 days. His corpse was legit animated, right? It was an animatron, like from a Disney special or something, right? Because his mouth moved, his head turned, and his arms moved. So not only did they have to taxidermy the corpse, they then had to hollow it out, they had to put in some fairly complicated animatronics, and then get it all to work. It's not the most impressive animatronics, if you remember in the special, but that's what made it creepier, honestly. But still, could they do that in 25 days, especially if they didn't know he was going to pass? I mean, if he was sick and they all knew he was going to die, maybe they could have planned all this. But if he died unexpectedly, it said at the last day of the bloodshed, whatever that means, then they got to work pretty fast. So anyway, they have to animate his corpse. Then this coffin dealie was pretty complex, right? I mean, there's a crankshaft they stuck in there to make it all work. So maybe they already had that built in advance, who knows, but it still had to hook up to him, so maybe not. But here's the reason I think it's been around for a while, because remember when he stuck the crankshaft in and turned it, a bunch of dust went poof. So not only was it complex, it's also quite dusty. So that to me implies, that it's been sitting here for a while. So why would it be sitting there for a while? Well, they had to get all the hunters together. Now, granted, they probably dropped everything because they all want the bloodstone, but still, they got to get everybody there, all the flight plans, etc. So that's one factor. And they also got to catch the Man-Thing. There was so much to prepare for this ceremony, so many things going on that, okay, I can believe this. I can believe 10 months, right? December 15th to October 31st. And you have to think about the fact that Marvel knew it was 10 months. It's not like this suddenly surprised them and they went, oh man, we made this take 10 months. That was a mistake. No, they planned it out perfectly. So they're just accepting the fact that it was a long time for this ceremony. And you know what? That they can just wait. Everybody can just wait because this is a very valuable stone. The ceremony has to be perfect. And I'm sure Ulysses was very specific on what he wanted. Whenever he died, this is how it had to go. So I like this myself. I think October 31st is perfect. I think it fits. Let me know what you think. If you think Disney's choice, from what we're seeing now in the timeline book, of October makes sense. All right, don't forget, we do have the full timeline doc out on my Google Drive, phases 1 and 2, the rest of 2 and 3. Of course, here's phase 4, and down in the lower right-hand corner is good old Werewolf by Night, all by itself, connected to nothing. And then phase 5, which so far has all been in 2026, which is kind of wild. Don't forget, we do have the September contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and I'll announce the winner in early October. And, of course, we have the Discord, talking about the timeline. So I'd love to have you come out and join us. And as you can see, Robbie's telling me to do a Shang-Chi video. So just a little bit of advance on what's coming up. I'm almost done with the controversial stuff. So I'm going to do one on Miss Marvel to explain why that's placed where it is. Then we'll go to Shang-Chi. And the final one will be on the OG movie itself, Iron Man 1. Oh, man. That one's going to be interesting. So anyway, those are the ones coming. And then by that time, hopefully the timeline book will arrive. And I promise lots of breakdowns on the book itself. By the way, that's why I'm doing these videos is I'd rather talk about this stuff in advance. Since we know what the timeline is, thank you, Amazon.com, we can talk about these controversial ones and look at why they were all placed that way. So that when I do the video on the timeline book, we can just talk about how cool the new book is and not worry about all this stuff. So anyway, hope that makes sense. All right, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we can all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.